Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be doing the box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw the release of Jackass Forever and new sci-fi thriller Moonfall. And let's just say Jackass Forever easily took the weekend, doubling that of the box office for Moonfall, so really just destroying it in so many different ways. And as the mainstream box office media continues to try to run cover for Hollywood and their ideas, we still see the numbers speak for themselves and continue to see their narratives be broken. So before going any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, loud that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time I have a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So as you can tell from this headline, it says how Jackass Forever thrived in the TikTok era with a $23 million plus opening, and Moonfall fell out of orbit at the weekend box office. I always love to come up with these witty headlines, don't they? And in this, we see, obviously, a couple of problems with it overall, right? Because, one, they're trying to say that the reason why Jackass Forever did as well as it did is because of us being in the TikTok era, though that may have had some impact, and though that may have been a key part of their marketing campaign. I would say that to say that a project, an IP that's been around for 22 years did well because of younger generations of people going out in droves to see it, and not the core fan base that has been around for the past 22 years that has been supporting these films, I think is kind of missing the forest for the trees. Yeah, you may have been able to get a lot of hits on social media, but as we all know, just because you get hits on social media, just because you might get certain clicks on your videos or certain clicks on your trailers, that does not equate or equal. I don't know why I said equate that way, but that does not equate to success at the box office, right? We've seen this happen time and time again. It's what led to, for instance, them saying Solo: A Star Wars Story was going to be a major hit based on pre-sales, based on early reactions, or rather more so based on early indications from social media, and then it just never actually panned out. People didn't actually show up to the theater. What it all comes down to at the end of the day is a story being told that most people view as being worth being told, worth being seen in a theater, where they're going to spend upwards of $10 on a ticket, upwards of $10 to $15 on just a popcorn soft drink, maybe on a small popcorn soft drink combo, going upwards of $15 and $20. I mean, you're looking at probably spending a minimum of $30 just going to see a movie and having a basic drink or popcorn, let alone if you're in any of the major cities where there are restrictions on the number of people that can fit in a screen, also on whether you have to wear a mask or whether or not you have to show a passport, right? There's all these other things that are just going on right now that some people in some cities don't want to have to deal with, but in the vast majority of places, the vast majority of people just have no interest in going to see these films because the films themselves are not really that interesting, are not really that innovative, are not really seemingly enough to want to actually go out and not just spend the money, but also put up with people in general, right? It's obviously it's amazing to see how the media has always tried to spin that fear narrative, right? That, be afraid, be very, very afraid. We got the Omicron variant. Soon we're going to have the Omega variant, right? Going to have all this fear that's being shoved down our throats. And yet, when it comes to the box office, as much as these shills love to try and use it as an excuse for the failings of the box office, they kind of missed the whole point of it, which is that, no. What this is showing us is that Jackass Forever is understanding its audience, is understanding the types of persons and types of people that are going to go see their film, and so therefore they are marketing their films towards that group. They're marketing their films towards those people. Whereas with Moonfall, it has a generic story. It has a generic trailer, therefore, because of that, there's nothing really unique or interesting about it in the first place, and so, therefore, most people are going to look at that and say either, one, I've never even heard of Moonfall until you talked about it, Odin. Again, I get that a lot in some of these box office breakdowns, and then two, they're going to say, yeah, I saw the trailer for it, and I saw the basic premise and idea, and I saw the cast, and I said, yeah, I could wait for this one. I don't need to go see it, right? So the excuse that Deadline gives is that it's the disaster genre that's been overplayed the last several years. That's why people are tired of the disaster genre. But I made this point in my video just the other day that, well, if you look at a film like San Andreas that just came out, last 5 years, hey, guess what? That film made massive profits. That film not only made its money back, but made a handy amount back actually in net gain, net profits. And one could try to argue saying, well, it had The Rock in it. Yeah, but we know very clearly that just because you have stars in your film, that does not automatically mean people are going to go see your film. Look at the 355 as a great example of that. Regardless of how anyone feels about people like Jessica Chastain or any of the other actresses in that film, most of those names are names that people recognize, are names that have been in other major projects before. So if any film was going to showcase that audiences want to go see certain stars on the screen, that would be a great example. But in the end, it came down to the fact that the story did not seem that compelling. The story did not seem that interesting based on the trailers. And how do I know this? Well, because it's only made $17 million and it's been out for well over a month, and it's essentially done making any money at the box office at this point. No one wants to go see it, and I imagine no one's going to want to buy it on physical media either. So we see the media continuing to spin their various narratives, right? That Jackass Forever, it's only doing well because of TikTok. Or primarily doing well because of TikTok, not because the fan base, the core fan base is being pleased, right? This is the same thing that happened with Scream, right? The reason why Scream did as well as it did is because they were able to make the film for a small enough amount of money. That's another key factor that Hollywood seems to just not understand here, spending money wisely. And they were able to make the film for a reasonable amount of money, a reasonable budget. They were then able to specifically go after their core demographic, the people that have been with their films since the very beginning, even though the films have been making less and less and less money over time, and they were able to get to those fans. And guess what? Now, after almost a month of it being in release, it's made about $30 million or so in actual net gains and net profits. So they were able to figure that out. Jackass Forever, based on these $23 million it's made domestically, and we don't have the numbers even yet for its foreign numbers, and it's released in Mexico, it's released in Singapore, UK, Ireland, Iceland, Norway. So all these countries where, again, I would say probably when you add it up, especially with the UK, probably would be another 5 million, maybe, could be more than that even. We'll probably get this film closer to $30 million, which would, guess what? Put it past the break-even point after just one weekend. So is this going to be a massive box office juggernaut that's going to make massive profits? No. Is it going to make its money back and make a fair amount of profit on top of it? Absolutely. And why is it doing that? Because it saw who its core fan base was. It gave their core fan base exactly the things they wanted to see in the trailers and the promotional materials, maybe even reaching out to others through TikTok and other means, but they knew exactly the type of person that would want to go see their film, and they reached out to them. Whereas with films like Moonfall, we don't really know exactly what the story is even about, other than it is, the moon is falling to the earth, literally in the title of the actual film. So you look to that, you look to the types of stories that have been told by Hollywood, you look to the fact that they spent $165+ million on that production budget alone, not even taking into account marketing cost, and you think to yourself, this is insane. This is completely insane how Hollywood is just so out of it, has lost touch and has lost so much touch with reality that they continue to perpetuate these films that just no one wants to go and see. So looking at the actual numbers themselves as they have been reported thus far, I'll go ahead and update that. $23.5 million is the number one film for Jackass Forever. And again, we're in a world now where for the box office, Jackass Forever is the number one film, and has actually helped to push Spider-Man No Way Home down to the number 3 spot for the first time in its release. So again, Jackass Forever making $23.5 million at over 3,600 screens. So again, very respectable number there. Film's going to break even once we get those foreign numbers back in, and the once we actually get the adjustments that come typically Monday or Tuesday of the actuals from the weekend. Moonfall only made around $10 million on a massive budget. Now, this film did also get released internationally, which we don't have the numbers yet. Last time I checked, I will refresh the page, of course, to check and see if those numbers have been actually entered in and put in at this point. But because it was released in a lot more countries as of this weekend, I expect that number for the total will be a lot more than $10 million. But the question is, how much more, and will it be enough to be able to even surpass how far behind it is of Jackass Forever? Because I honestly think that when everything is said and done for this weekend specifically, that Jackass Forever's 30 million or so that it'll have internationally will be a lot more than what Moonfall has. But again, we'll have to actually wait and see what those numbers look like when those numbers get released. Spider-Man No Way Home, though, did fall back to 9.6 million, or rather, fell to the third place for the first time, making $9.6 million, only a 13% drop. So 8 weeks in release, over 50 days in theaters, and it only had a 13% drop from last weekend. Eat your heart out, Scotty Boy Mendelsohn. Remember when he was trying to argue about the drop-off of that film and comparing it to other films that were either flops or not as successful as this film? I remember. So this movie almost at $750 million domestically, which it will definitely be able to cross by next weekend. So again, kudos to Sony for making a very profitable film, obviously with a little help from Disney, but only about 25%. 13% drop there. Scream 5 dropped to the number 4 spot with another $4.7 million, a 35% drop there in its 4th week of release. So still doing relatively strong, but definitely dropping out of it. And as more films continue to be released, eventually it'll just drop out completely. But it's made its money back. It's made some profit. And so again, I think that the fans of the franchise overall will likely be pretty happy. Sing 2 is actually a very interesting story because this film added another worldwide $20 million or so. It was around 270 last weekend and it jumped up to 290. So it's actually possible that Sing 2 could end its run by getting upwards of $300 million worldwide. It's still in over 3,000 theaters here domestically, added another 4.1 million, only dropped 11% in its 7th week of release. Again, the little engine that could. It's made over 40 million in net gain profit. And hey, Universal has itself a little moneymaker on its hands. Not making a whole lot, but still making money compared to other films that I've talked about, which have not made their money. Films like The Kingsman, which is still a massive financial failure. Redeeming Love, can't say much about that, or American Underdog, because we don't have the budgets for those films. But films like The 355, right? Massive financial failure. Ghostbusters Afterlife, as we talked about previously, was able to cross the threshold it needed to break even and is now up to $5-6 million in net gain profits. And that's, of course, with the physical media release now available. Again, I'm so upset that I was not able to buy the special edition set that was available because, man, that thing looks cool. Shout out to Midnight's Edge After Dark. Shout out to Tom and shout out to Valiant Renegade as well for doing coverage of that box set, because it just made me so jealous of not being able to get my hands on that because it looks so cool. But anyway, Afterlife is again starting to get sales on physical media. Those typically get delayed. Usually it's like about a month or so, a little less than a month before those numbers actually start to be reported, so we can actually start to say how much extra money the film has made in its post-theatrical release. But this film is still in around 954 screens, so it is still making some money with $535,000 there. West Side Story is still around for Oscar season, 800 screens. Still a financial flop. House of Gucci, same story there as well. And again, we just see the numbers just drop off. 75,000 for The King's Daughter, which is just, yeah, that film is donezo. So looking at Jackass Forever, as I said, 23.5 million. Don't have any of the international numbers there yet. Moonfall, $10 million domestically. I'll refresh, and still no international numbers for that film either. Spider-Man No Way Home up to $1.775 billion. So well on its way to the $1.8 billion mark. The real question here is, when does it stop? Does it go to does it stop at 1.8? Does it go to 1.85? Does it go all the way up to 1.9? Who really knows at this point? And again, the fact that it's doing all of this without a communist China release is a very, very good thing, and a clear sign to Hollywood that you don't need to do a deal with the devil. You don't need to work with the communist in China to make money on your films. Screen 5, $113 million worldwide there. The 355, $17.4 million. Massive financial failure. And as I said, Sing 2 is, again, very impressive numbers being shown there in its overall release. Interestingly enough, doing well in France and the UK, and of course, doing very well in the domestic market with its strong holds week to week in their numbers. Going into the actual charting, because guess what? We like to chart here, with $23.5 million for Jackass Forever. As I said, I think that number will indeed go up quite a bit, or again, just enough for it to actually break even as of this weekend once we get those foreign numbers in. As of right now, though, $23.5 million in its opening weekend has it already just on the domestic number at 900,000 in losses. So that will easily be made up. If not by the end of the day today with the foreign numbers, then by the end of next week. I mean, this is a movie that's going to be making enough to easily make its money back and some profit to boot. It's at around 2.4 times its budget with this number. So for those following, 2.5 times the budget is the actual break-even number. I do actually have in my charting some new numbers here. So I'll go ahead and just show you real quick the actual chart itself. And so as you can see, I have a new column that I'll be adding to the website very, very soon. I just need to adjust some things. But as you see, 2.4 times the budget for Jackass, whereas Moonfall only 0.1 times its budget. So as you can see, much different story going on there with Moonfall. Again, $212 million in losses for this film. So we'll again wait and see what it does internationally. I just don't really see it as being a film that's going to be able to even make enough internationally, because again, this film has to make a crap ton of money at this point to be able to break even. And we all know that if you're not making a lot of your money here domestically and you're relying on foreign markets, typically those foreign markets, you don't get as much return on your investment. And since it's very clear, it's one of the most, I think, clear budgets that's ever existed. Like, it's something that's been talked about for weeks now. Typically, you don't find out budgets until maybe a week or two before the release. But the fact that we've known how much this film has cost and that the film would likely be a flop like weeks beforehand, I think kind of just speaks to the current state of the marketplace and just the state of Hollywood in general, with 212.9 million in losses there. King's Daughter, again, didn't really add a whole lot, so that's still 70 million in losses for that film, which took years to release. Scream 5 up to 31.8 million in net gain profits. 355 is going to probably end its run well over 100, not well over, but over $100 million in losses, even though it has been very close to and will get close to doubling what it made in the first 2 weeks of its release, which is always impressive in comparison to other films. Still not enough to actually get to anywhere close to a break-even point. As you can see there with the numbers for American Underdog, again, don't have the budget for that film. Kingsman, even though it is doing well, again, it's made even more than double what it had in its first 2 weeks of release. Still a $77 million loss with how much the film cost, so still not looking very good for that movie. Sing 2, on the other hand, $47 million in net gain profits, where Spider-Man No Way Home is at $765 million in net gain profit with a $1.775 billion release. Again, insane numbers there. Narrative breaker, continued narrative breaker, and also really the only bright spot to Disney, with Disney getting 25% of this number here, which is enough for it to make up for its losses as far as the MCU films from this year, the pure Disney MCU films from this year, but not nearly enough to make up for the other Disney losses from this past year. Matrix Resurrections still financial flop. Again, all these other films really haven't added a whole lot to change their fate either. Still massive financial losses there. Encanto being another example of that, now being, of course, available for free on Disney Plus. And again, for actually good things from people who follow the channel about the film. Apparently don't talk about Bruno is a big thing. And then goes back to Afterlife. I know a lot of people were excited when this film finally was able to cross its break-even number, now up to $5.5 million in net gain profits, and starting to make some profits in the post-theatrical release with it being available on 4K and Blu-ray. So anyway, those are the box office numbers. What do you think of these numbers? Do you think that Jackass Forever will break even this weekend once we get those international numbers in? I personally think that it will. Do you think that Moonfall will be somehow an international success? I don't really see it happening at this point. I guess the one other place I could check that typically has this type of information, sometimes relatively early on, would be a place like Box Office Mojo, which, again, look at I hate the design of this website and what they've done to it. See, the numbers, this is the type of design change that you'd need to do. So shout out to the numbers for having actually a very clean and a very logical design change in their website. Whereas, again, when you look back to Box Office Mojo, it just makes you sad, because the site used to be so great. It used to be so awesome. I used to love going there all the time. And unfortunately now, not only is it just not good looking, it also lacks so much more information. It's hid behind a paywall, and it's even now behind on reporting numbers. Again, it's still only reporting 3.4 million. So this film's not even reporting the up-to-date domestic numbers for this film. So it's just really sad to see that once great site fall into that. But anyway, do you think Jackass Forever is going to hit its break-even point this weekend? I think it will. Let me know your thoughts about that. And also, what do you think Moonfall is going to do internationally? Think it's going to be enough for it to break even? I just don't see it. It needs to make $365 million worldwide in order for it to break even. I just don't see that happening. And what are your thoughts about any of the other films that are on this list, or any of the other films that are set to be released in the next couple of weeks before, of course, the next massive hit, which is The Batman? And some people disagree with me on that film being the next billion-dollar film. And hey, I agree with you. I think that the length of the film could easily have an impact on how well it does financially. I think as well how it gets received, and the controversies and the criticisms from a lot of fans that have already been levied out there also indicate that maybe the fan base isn't quite there for it in the same level as some of these projections we're starting to give for the film are concerned, especially from Box Office Pro. And hey, I think that there's definitely an argument to be made there, but I think that no one's going to disagree with the fact that the film is going to be financially successful at the very least. The question, of course, is how successful is it? I think that there's at least a chance for it to be a billion-dollar hit, but we'll have to wait for those opening weekend numbers and, of course, the subsequent weeks, as it will be dealing with a lot more competition than films like Spider-Man No Way Home had to deal with back in December. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about this and anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, loud that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and your weekend. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members, starting off with Patreon animation commentator Brandon, let's go Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father. Father Damian Cook, Fuzz Aldrin, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Hymir Ari Hymason, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyles 79, Laura, The Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ellen, Stan Andrian, Teresa Martin, or Miss Martin Muses, Theodore Benden, Tina Bojan, and Tina B., the Empress of the Universe. Thank you very much for supporting me over on Patreon. Also to my Subscribe Star peeps, UAB Mad Dog, which is Mr. Mike Jackson, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stand 4, John B., Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on the Subscribe Star platform. And to my 3 local supporters, we got Kara Tharp, UAB Mad Dog, which is once again Mike Jackson, super supporter over there, and Robert Barnes. Thank you very much for supporting me over on the Locals platform. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, please think about signing up on either of those platforms. You can find a link in the description below that will lead you to all of those different pages. It is known as the Willow link, as it is w.lo link, and it will have all of the links to that, to the Discord channel, to all different kinds of places, including places to support me as well. At the Citizen of Asgardian level, you get Citizen of Asgardian level is how it's labeled on Patreon. Still need to fix that, but Citizen of Asgard level, you get a shout out at the end of every live stream and video. If you join at the Army of Asgard level, you also access to a giveaways channel, which is featured on the Discord that I have. I know, River, it is very exciting. It is so exciting, where you get giveaways for things like 4K titles, Steelbook titles, etc. Again, I got some 4K Steelbooks of The Punisher, for instance. I've got 4Ks of tons of other movies, so I'm giving those away all the time. So if that sounds interesting to you, join the Army of Asgard level. Also, at the Keep of the Bifrost level, you get all of that stuff, plus you get access to a once a month and maybe twice a month. We're trying to add an extra podcast in there of me and John the Flick Pick Flickinger, where we talk about movies. And also, you get to ask your questions. Any questions that you want to ask, you get to ask with that podcast. And then you have the Chosen of Valhalla level, which gives you access to all of those. And also a once-a-month podcast where you get to be featured with me on the main channel. We all get to talk together about movies, culture, pop culture, anything really that the Chosen want to talk about, or anything the Chosen want to promote is on the table. So if you like that, join at the Chosen of Valhalla level. Also, during your first month of support, you get a free t-shirt. Any t-shirt that you want from the main store, you get access to, and I do ship internationally anywhere in the world. Anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.